despite the fact that I have done hundreds of videos and reviews about Disney cartoons and Disney films, I've never actually talked about Beauty and the Beast. I think I talked about the Belle's Enchanted Christmas kind of spin off film, but not the 1991 Beauty and the Beast film itself. I thought now was as good a time as ever. I'm not going to really call this a review because I'm not going to go into any specific details. And I think the main reason for that is because I don't like this film. And it's not a film that needs to be reviewed to encourage people to watch it. Certainly, if you've never seen it, I'd say it's worth watching. And the soundtrack is amazing. Well, a couple of the songs are amazing. But I genuinely never really took to this film. It was released, as I said, in 1991, the year before I was born. It's directed by Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise, with a screenplay by the fabulous Linda Wolverton. And it's based on The Beauty and the Beast, which is a fairy story, and that's why, of course, we get various different adaptations of Beauty and the Beast. But I think it's safe to say Disney's is the most iconic. And if you aren't aware, it focuses on our protagonist, Belle, voiced by Paige O'Hara. Belle is a bit of a groundbreaker in the sense that she is a Disney heroine, but she's actually intelligent and champions independence, which up until this point was not really the case. Mostly Disney heroines were seeking their Prince Charming, if you like. But Belle is actually a lot more independent. One thing leads to another. She ends up being held captive in the Beast's home. The Beast is voiced by Robby Benson. And when she's there, she begins to find out the truth about the Beast. We begin, as viewers, to learn about his true nature and that you can't just judge him from his exterior. But of course, there's a deeper reason for why he looks the way he does. And I won't go into too much detail, just in case you haven't seen it. But we do learn, with really good pacing, little bits of information about what has happened, what needs to happen, and a lot of this revolves around a rose in a bell jar, which, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of this film, the rose in the bell jar is one of the most iconic Disney motifs ever. Whenever I see it, instantly know what it refers to. It is absolutely stunning, and that aspect of it I like. I think Belle is a really likeable protagonist. The Beast, I don't care for. I don't dislike the Beast at all. But I don't care for him. I don't feel anything for him, if that makes sense. There's a really interesting description of the Beast on Wikipedia that explains what he's made up of. And apparently, and it makes sense when you kind of read it, he has the horns of an American bison, the arms and body of a bear, the eyebrows of a gorilla, the teeth and mane of a lion, and the tusks of a wild boar, the legs and tails of a wolf. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. That's how the animators drew him, and looking at him, I wouldn't have picked all of that apart, but actually, it makes a lot of sense. And the Beast and Belle have an interesting story. It's interesting enough to sustain my entertainment, but not really that frequently. There are Disney films that I can watch again and again. This one I've seen the whole thing quite a few times, but I think at this point it's something that would be background noise for me rather than something I'd watch for the entertainment. However, when the cutlery are on screen and the crockery, it has my full attention. Be Our Guest is without a doubt one of the most fabulous Disney songs. Definitely my favourite song in Beauty and the Beast. I feel like none of the other songs are really that iconic. Nothing else really stands out for me, which is unusual with a Disney classic, because usually there are at least 3 or 4 songs that are fabulous. But for me, Be Our Guest is really the only one that I truly love. But then we have Lumiere, Cogsworth, Mrs. Potts and Chip. I won't say what their real identities are in case, again, you aren't aware for whatever reason. Angela Lansbury is particularly fabulous as Mrs. Potts, and whenever they are animated, in the literal sense, I absolutely adore it. So those bits I actually think are fabulous. So the overarching narrative is well developed, it's well written, well animated. I just feel like it never spoke to me, and as a child I did watch it, I did have the VHS, but it was never a favourite. I had a lot of Disney toys. None of them... I mean, most of my Disney toys were based on animals. So Aristocats, Lion King, 101 Dalmatians. But The Beauty and the Beast it was never a firm favourite. I think I had the Grolier book, and that's about it in terms of merchandise. I like it as a piece of Disney history. As I said, things like the Rose in the Bell Jar, it's very iconic. I like Cogsworth and Lumiere, Mrs. Potts and Chip. They're very iconic, and I love whenever they're on screen. I find it very funny, actually. But as an actual film on its own, to sit down and watch it from start to finish, maybe it did as a child, I don't remember specifically, but certainly as an adult, it just never seems to grab my attention. I'd love to know if you feel the same way and if you know why. I don't necessarily know why I feel that way, because there's nothing fundamentally bad about it. There's nothing specific that I would change. It's just a general feeling. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm not going to pretend that I love it just to try and, agree with everybody else. But at the same time, I'm not saying I hate it. It's not a terrible film. There is, as I said, nothing wrong with it. Just for me, as a Disney fan, it's unusual that I don't absolutely adore it.